Today we worked on single leg defense again. So started off again just going over the basics of taking a single leg. Then we went into sprawling on it. So getting the wizard grip and then moving on to the front and then sprawling. After the sprawl, forcing to turtle, going to the side. And then the main lesson, that was all review from Friday. And then the main lesson was on the clock choke, which is when you're attacking turtle from the side. So this variation was with the near side arm. So you get a opposite collar grip with your near side arm, and then you get your hips in front of the shoulder, and you get your other elbow in front of the shoulder. So you have your arm around the neck, and then you're pushing back. So you're pushing their body back and holding their neck in place. And that's where the choke is. It's actually super uncomfortable from the bottom. It feels like your head's getting like popped off, squeezed until it pops off. So it was interesting is that in class, a lot of people, at least two people said, I learned a different variation, but this way is so much simpler. It's like less steps. I was rolling with one of them, and she was like, the way she learned was like, you actually use the other arm to choke, and then use the near arm to grip on a wrist, and it's this whole involved process. So it's just interesting that it's sort of like that Picasso painting of the bull, where you remove, it's like 8 pictures of a bull, each one with less strokes. So you're removing everything that's not needed. It's just to the fundamentals. So I guess if you sort of reverse engineer the whole thing, like what is necessary? What's necessary for a choke is you have pressure on both carotid arteries. So that's both sides of your neck. That's all that's necessary. So and this is what I've been trying to understand with chokes. So I'm not very good at chokes, and I think what most people do, myself included, is just sort of like get a grip around the neck and squeeze as hard as possible. But what you want to do is you want to apply pressure in 2 specific areas, to the side, the front sort of quarter of both sides of the neck. Everything else is kind of extraneous. You don't need to apply that much pressure if it's in the right spot. So just understanding where the pressure points are allows you to not expend excess energy, and allows you to not just excess energy, but like excess effort, or excess moves, excess all that. So that allows you to do it quicker, cleaner, and then I think it also allows you to do it from different positions, right? So this one, we're doing it from turtle, but you could also do it from side control. So all the chokes are the same. You're always going to apply pressure to the arteries. What are the veins? I don't remember actually. It's either the carotid arteries or the jugular veins, or the jugular arteries and carotid veins. I forgot which way it is. But you're either stopping blood from going in, or you're stopping blood from going out. I think you're stopping blood from going in. Anyway, so that's what every choke is. And then what the difference between the chokes is the hand positions, right? So cross collar choke, clock choke, paper cutter choke, Ezekiel choke. Those are all putting pressure in the same spot, except with your hands in different orientations. And then, but those orientations are also relative to each other. So the clock choke from turtle and the clock choke from side control look different, but then if you rotate, it looks the same. Which is pretty cool. I guess it's sort of like, I don't know, Tetris or something, right? So by understanding how the choke works, it allows you to cut out excess movement and effort. It allows you to understand how you can apply it to different positions, or even it's very chaotic when you're rolling, and suppose you're in turtle, you're like, oh, I know that there's a choke from this, but I don't remember exactly. Like, you don't have time to be like, oh, it's these 5 steps, I gotta do this and then this and this. Like, maybe you're like, oh, this one I use my near side arm, right? And then you kind of start doing that, and muscle memory kicks in or something like that. But if you remember, oh, I need pressure here and I need pressure there, then that, I think, would also help you remember exactly how everything works together. The other thing is that I think I've been doing frames wrong. So frames are when you use your skeletal structure to bear weight. So, for example, if you're on your back and you have your forearm up, to hold your opponent away from you, that's called framing. So what I've been doing is I've been doing that, and people say that my defense is good, but I think they say that because I'm just holding people off. But framing can also be sort of offensive, or more proactive, not just reactive. So I've been doing it reactively, and then eventually you're gonna lose because they have all their body weight so on you, right? So your frame will eventually collapse. And I think what I've been telling myself is that, it's because whoever I'm rolling with is like much heavier than me, so of course it's gonna be like that. But so after class I was talking to Alan, and he was telling me that my frame was not like 100% correct. So if I have my arm up, so I have my forearm up, right? The radius and ulnar bones perpendicular to my opponent, or like along his shoulder line, and then my humerus is supporting me in between, right? So my upper arm is directly toward my opponent, and then my forearm is perpendicular. So all of his weight is on my forearm, and then that is being supported by my upper arm. So what I've been doing is most of the weight has been sort of shaded toward my wrist or my elbow, I think, most of the time. And then what it should be is sort of like in between that area. So maybe like 2/3 of the way toward my elbow instead of like halfway to my elbow. And the point of that is if I'm using my elbow, that probably could take the most weight, and it's also uncomfortable for my opponent because it's driving into him. So there's like a little benefit there, but the downside is that it's easier for him to move it away from me. It's easier for him to move it away, so I can't use the frame anymore because all the weight's distributed in one point. So if he's able to disengage that point even for like half a second, he can move the whole thing away. And then on the other side, if the weight is more on my wrist, then there's a lever at my elbow, so you can collapse that lever. So the more the weight is toward my elbow, the stronger that frame is. So I've just been kind of not paying that much attention to where on my arm the weight is being borne. And then depending on the strength of my arm to hold it up, and then if it works, I'm like, oh, it works, and if it doesn't work, I'm like, oh, it's because he's too heavy, and it's not supposed to, that never works all the time, kind of thing. But I think focusing on just optimizing it will help a lot, especially because people are heavier than me. Right? Like, even if it's true that even if I'm doing it perfectly, they'll still be able to collapse it. I need to give myself the best chance, and it'll give me more room. The other thing is, so the whole point of the frame is actually to allow you to move your body, right? So the whole point of jiu-jitsu is not really to move your opponent, it's to move yourself around your opponent. And the frame allows you to do that, right? So if you hold your opponent away from you, you're creating the space that allows you to move. So when I'm in side control on the bottom, what you want to do from there, or one of the strategies to do from there, is to get to half guard. So that means that so when you're in side control, you're perpendicular to each other. So both of your legs are, say, to the left of his legs, and then if you want to get to half guard, you want your right leg to go in between his legs, and then you would want your left leg, your outside leg, to form a shield between you and your opponent. So what I've been doing is I've had my frames, and then what you're supposed to do is you have your frame, and then you use that frame to create the space to get your right leg in between your opponent's legs, and to get your left leg as a shield in between your opponent's body and yourself. So then I have just kind of been using it to hold my opponent off of me, like kind of prevent him from doing whatever he wants to do to me, and then I would like sneak my right leg through just using my flexibility, and then what happens is my opponent flans me and I'm like kind of screwed. So the whole point of this conversation about frames is that what I should be doing is having stronger frames, and then using the space the frame gives me to move both of my legs into position, one to hook and one to shield. And so I guess what I'm doing now is I am using the frames in order to not get squashed, and then I'm trying to maneuver myself through, rather than using the frames to create space that gives me options. So the way I'm doing it now, I don't really have, it's like a kind of an all or nothing. If I get my stuff in, then I'm okay. If I don't, then I'm really flattened out, versus creating the frames and the space, and then that allows me to do what I can, to get those in. I think the difference is that the correct way is more about maneuvering, giving myself space to maneuver versus just trying to get into a position. Like the way I'm doing it now is that I know that this position is theoretically stronger than that position, so I'm just getting myself into the semblance of that position versus using the frames to actually get into a strong position.